Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the first meeting of the Contra Costa County Equitable Economic Development Task Force. We are 30 participants at this point. We are expecting about 10 more folks to join us. I did get a couple last minute emails. So that means we are larger than one screen. So you will be able to scroll between multiple screens once everybody joins, although at this point, it looks like we're all still on, we're still on one screen. This is you are hopefully had a chance to take a look at the roster of those of you who are joining today, and you can see that you are in good company. What we've done is sought to bring together private sector leaders. Predominantly, this is a private sector group, but we have terrific leaders from community-based organizations. With everything that we're doing here, we're trying to lift up the voice of those most impacted by COVID-19. And we really appreciate our community partners helping us identify people to join, our community residents to join this effort. And so you are from very different sectors and different sizes of companies, and some small business and some very big business, and really appreciate all the perspectives that you're going to bring today. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we're going to let people join. We do have the master power to mute you, but we will try to have a very nice Zoom webinar this morning, and we really do value your time. So our objectives this morning are to get off to a strong start, and to get a chance for those of you to know who's in the Zoom, as they say, instead of who's in the room. Thank you for those of you who were able to participate in our pre-meeting survey. So our objectives today are to lay the foundation about what we're dealing with in Contra Costa in terms of what we know about what people are experiencing, what the economy is experiencing, and talk about some potential opportunity and set a bit of a course for us over the next, through next June. Initially we're going to meet every 2 weeks. Beyond that, we're going to shift to once a month, hopefully, as we turn a corner. I will tell you that July 29th, I did not expect the pandemic to be getting worse. I thought at this point we would have turned a corner and that things would be getting better. So what I'm going to do is just talk about, in terms of what we mean by equity. We were very intentional in terms of the title of this group. And again, I'm Kristen Connolly. I'm the executive director of the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, which is a 501c3 organization that brings public and private sector leaders together. We're the lead organization on this. And you'll hear from our chairman in a moment, Alex Marin Sr. But we partnered with the Employment and Human Services Division of Contra Costa County, as well as the Workforce Development Board, in wanting to work on how can we get to a better, more inclusive economy on the other side of this pandemic, and how can we deal with some of the most pressing issues. So for the purposes of this work, we want to use Policy Link's definition of equity, which is just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. This task force will be grounded in the value of inclusivity, and whenever possible, will lift up the voices of those most impacted by the current pandemic and by the persistent opportunity gaps in our region. So 2 operating principles for us will be transparency and accountability for results. So a quick note about Zoom procedures. We're conducting these meetings using a webinar format on Zoom. So as I mentioned, you're a group of diverse private sector leaders across many different sectors, as well as important key stakeholders that have been invited to participate as members of the task force. Panelists have video capabilities and speaking privileges. In addition to the panelists, members of the public with an interest in this topic may attend these meetings in listen-only mode. We've enabled the Q&A function for attendees to submit their questions, which we'll be monitoring closely, and we will also be recording our meetings. So, and one of the things I just wanted to recognize, Donna Van Wert, who's the executive director of the Contra Costa Workforce Development Board. Donna, you want to wave? You're going to get to introduce yourself too, but Donna and Devorah Levine. Devorah will also have a chance to introduce herself of the Employment and Human Services Department. But we talked about there's an inherent tension between being inclusive and getting work done. And so we're going to be navigating that together. And I appreciate all that you bring to that. So we're going to move on to give an opportunity for each of the three partner organizations to talk about why this work is so important. So I'm going to go ahead and lean on the founding chairman of the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, Alex Marin, to kick that off about why this work is important to the partnership.
Thank you, Kristen, and good morning, everyone. I think that this is a critical moment in our nation's history, let alone the history of Contra Costa, in that the COVID-19 crisis has created some problems and it has evidenced some problems. I think the purpose that we should be after today is forming collective action around focused actions that we can accomplish in the next reasonable time frame. I don't think we should be thinking about grand ideas. I don't think we should be developing things that are cutting edge concepts. I think we should be focused on practical aspects of dealing with the two issues I spoke about. So from a personal standpoint, I can say that we have about over 600 businesses at Bishop Ranch. And just to put it in perspective, we have one restaurant that has 90 employees. Today, they have 3. We had a number of doctors and dentists whose businesses went to zero in April and May. We were able, fortunately, to help them out. They're back in business, but there are many travel agencies and restaurants and other service-oriented businesses who are not. And unfortunately, the people who have been affected by these layoffs are at the lower end of the economic spectrum. And they are the ones that are being impacted by lack of health care, lack of opportunity, lack of connectivity in their homes. And so I think we ought to be thinking about the collective good of our community and set an example for others as to how to be practical in offering solutions. So from the business community, I can only say that we stand by to hear from this group what those focused actions ought to be so that we can be a participant in them. So with that, and I have to apologize in advance, long ago I made a commitment to be on a call shortly before 10, so I'm going to have to cut off early, but I did want to weigh in on how important I think this is.
Great. Thanks so much, Alex. Next, I want to go to Kathy Gallagher, the Director of the Employment and Human Services Department. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Kristen, and thank you very much for convening this group. And I do very much appreciate Alex's comments. Yeah, I'm Kathy Gallagher. I'm the Director of the Employment and Human Services Department in Contra Costa County. And we at EHSD are very excited to be a supportive partner in this very important effort. We're on the front lines of the impacts of the pandemic economy. And we see every day the devastation that is being impacted on people in our county. As workers have lost jobs, they've lost wages through furloughs, they've had their health benefits ended. Many have needed our help. We provide the public assistance help to that lower income group of people in our county that have lost their incomes. We've seen 128% increase in CalFresh, that's food stamps, applications since March. And that's huge. People suffering from food insecurity is just not something that we're accustomed to seeing in large numbers in our county, and we should not accept that. And I see that as part of the mission and the collective action of this group to move the needle toward that economic and commercial recovery in our county, to aid those workers and to aid our business community as well. This is just an extraordinary event that we're all living through. I appreciate too our focus on equity, and as you can well imagine, the impacts of the economics are similar to the health impacts we've been hearing about from COVID-19, in that our families of color are carrying the disproportionate burden of the economic impacts, and that is something we're seeing every day in our business as well. So I fully support this effort. The task force is going to have the full attention of EHSD toward this effort and engagement. And we're very happy to be part of this. I'm really thrilled to see this get off the ground. I want to express my appreciation to Kristen and Alex and the leadership of CCEP in this effort. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy. Now we're going to turn to Donna Van Wert. Donna is the Executive Director of the Contra Costa County Workforce Development Board. Good morning,
Thank you.
Donna.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to see so many engaged participants this morning. Thank you very much. So the Workforce Development Board supports a robust network that creates and promotes dynamic education systems, high-performing businesses, and a prosperous local economy with an abundance of high-quality jobs and skilled workers to fill them. That is our mission. That's the work we do. And it is so embedded in this task force. And the need for the work that we do is so much greater right now because of the unusual. I'm a little tired of some of the words that we keep saying with this unforeseen or whatever, but these are unusual circumstances. And the work that we do is more important now than ever. And so this task force for me is almost very selfish because we need to bring people together. We don't do this work in a vacuum. Part of the WIB's focus is to bring partners together to solve these challenges together. So I really look forward to all of us as partners and stakeholders in really looking at what's going on and being proactive. I feel like we've been reactive for several months now, and that's understandable, but we need to move to proactive. We need to come up with strategies that can help our community, those most impacted, and ensure the well-being of our community. That includes economic well-being, an extremely important piece of the well-being of our community is the economic well-being. And we need to make sure that everybody is not just surviving, but thriving. So that needs to be embedded in the work that we do. Everybody needs to be able to thrive. So I'm really excited about all of these wonderful thought partners here today. Thank you, Kristen, for helping us lead this. Really excited to be working with you and Contra Costa Economic Partnership. Thank you to Kathy and Devora as well for helping us get this off the ground. So let's get to work.
Thanks, Donna. And it was as if you planned it, that your phone was ringing in the background. So yes,
Yeah.
I think it was right as you said that your services are needed more than ever. So absolutely true there. So what we're going to do now, and I'm thrilled we're 3 minutes ahead of schedule. We're going to go around the Zoom, as it were, because we don't have the benefit of all being in the same room. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know that everyone shows up differently in the boxes, and so I'm going to go ahead and call you. I'm going to call out 5 people ahead as we go down each row, and so we'll get to I'm going to summarize a bit the results of what we heard from the pre-event survey. But first, we just want to start by having you say your name and your affiliation, if you have one. And if, we want to, in the interest of time, we do want to keep this moving. But if you want to take up to 15 or so plus words to explain what your affiliation is, if it's not obvious, with a spin on why you're glad to be here, we're happy to give you those extra few words so that those of us on the task force can help put in context who you are and where you're coming from. So, and again, we'd love to, if anybody of the attendees wants to add in their 2 cents to these 3 questions. The pre-event survey, we asked folks, what is one impact COVID-19 you'd most like to see addressed in the task force? How have you seen your industry, business, or life impacted by COVID-19? And if you had to choose one, what sector do you think is most poised to grow in Contra Costa? So we'll get to what the group said about that. in a little bit, but we're just going to go around the Zoom. And the first two folks that are showing up in boxes to me are on my staff. So I'm going to lean on those folks. So here's the order. We're going to go in for just your quick introduction with your name, your affiliation, and 15 or so extra words if you'd like to share. So we're going to start with, this is the first four: Mark Orcutt, Lindy Lavender, BL Moore, and Angela Warren. Take it away, Mark.
Okay, my name is Mark Orcutt. I'm the Communications Director at the Contra Costa Economic Partnership. I'll save my 15 words for later.
Okay, Lindy.
Good morning, Lindy Lavender. I am the Director of Projects and Research at the Contra Costa Economic Partnership.
Great. Okay, BL, our first task force member. Take it away. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
BL Moore with Republic Services, also a board member and executive committee member for the East Bay Leadership Council. Really excited to be part of this group. I feel like those of us who have so much what we can do to help others and to focus on bringing people through a really difficult time, it just is exactly where I want to be.
Thank you. Angela. You're on mute still, Angela. There you go.
Sorry, I kept saying the host was not allowing me. Good morning, Angela Warren. I'm with Wise Girl Restaurant in Pleasant Hill. That is my business. I'm also the VP of Business Development for Land Home Financial Services. So I sort of wear two hats in the business world. I'm honored to be a part of this group. My heart is big, and I love that this has been put together by Kristen and her folks, and just also have a lot I want to be able to contribute as we move through this process. So thank you so much.
Great. So our next four folks in this order are going to be Tom Hansen, Patty Deutsch, Bob Linscheid, and Elisa Friedman. Go ahead, Tom.
Hello, my name is Tom Hansen. I'm with the Electricians Union, IBW Local 302. We represent the electricians in Contra Costa County. Thank you.
Great. Patty.
And I'm Patty Deutsch. I'm the Director of Government and Public Affairs for Marathon Petroleum Refinery in Martinez. And I'm the former chair of the East Bay Leadership Council.
Great. Bob.
Good morning. I'm Bob Linscheid. I'm Economic and Higher Education Advisor, also on the Executive Committee of the East Bay Leadership Council.
Elisa.
Hi everybody, Elisa Friedman, President and CEO of Opportunity Junction in East Contra Costa. We do job training and career counseling to help motivated job seekers. And 77% of those who have responded to our survey have noted a problem with employment need for a household member or for themselves. A lot of issues with broadband access and childcare.
Great, thank you. So next up, we're going to have the next four will be Keith Archuleta, Vic Baker, DC, Kelly, and then Kish. You could be the fifth. All right. You're up, Keith.
Good morning, everybody. It's such an honor to be here with you all. I'm Keith Archuleta. I'm President and CEO of Emerald HPC International. We're currently leading the Human Capital and Community Development Strategy for the Northern Waterfront Initiative and facilitating discussions throughout the region called Let's Talk About Race. And I'm a former chair of the East Bay Leadership Council and current board member. And I'm also representing the Antioch Community Foundation.
Great, thank you, Keith. Vic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vic Baker, Chair Emeritus of the East Bay Leadership Council. I have a passion, and also with PG&E, I don't know if I said that, but I also have a passion in organization and leadership, specifically sustainable and equitable growth of underrepresented in the workplace, with the emphasis of African Americans representation. We have a huge impact here at PG&E, specifically in our division. We have well over 100 cases of positive results here. And last week alone, we averaged 5 new cases every day. So that's PG&E as a region. So it's highly impactful for a region that houses and employs over 3,600 people in Contra Costa County.
Thank you. Okay, DC.
Morning, my name is DC Dorm Kelly. I'm the Chief Program Officer with Rubicon Programs. I'm excited to be here. Rubicon is a long-standing CBO providing economic mobility workforce services in the East Bay. In addition to operating the comprehensive AJCC at Port Chicago in collaboration with the Workforce Development Board. We have a number of sites throughout the East Bay and really emphasizing communities who are disproportionately impacted by poverty and systems involvement to connect them to job and career mobility.
Great, thank you. Kelly.
Good morning, my name is Kelly Shalene and I'm an Associate Vice Chancellor at the Contra Costa Community College District. So we have 3 colleges across the county. As open access institutions, we tend to focus our services on those who have substantial barriers to meeting their employment and their educational goals. And in my role, I oversee all workforce development and career education programming at the 3 colleges. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Okay, Kish, you're up.
Good morning, everybody. Kish Rajan. I am Chief Administrative Officer of Mount Diablo Resource Recovery, another local garbage and recycling company, and have worked with many of you over the years on strengthening our workforce systems, trying to make them more durable and modern. Certainly COVID is only revealing or intensifying the need for that. So I'm glad to be part of this group and look forward to working with you on these issues.
And Kish is too humble to mention that he's the former director of the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. So thank you, Kish, for making the time. So the next folks I have on my screen are Pam Kahn, Deneen Wolford, Betty, and we'll leave it there. The boxes are, so Pam, you're up. And I did want to mention Pam too is in a role which is appointed by Governor Newsom, part of the task force effort and focusing on small business. And so I hope you'll take a minute to mention that too, Pam. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Pamela Kahn. I'm the president owner of Bishop Wise Carver Corporation. We do industrial automation products. We're out in Pittsburgh, California. I'm a little bit of a retread. I think I've been just on about every group and board. I was appointed by Governor Brown to the Workforce Development Board. I served on that for quite a few years, as well as at the county level. I'm currently serving on Gavin Newsom's task force. I sit on the subcommittees for small business, as well as the Workforce Transition Subcommittee, which just got merged with the I'm not sure exactly what they're going to call us. I think we're going to find out today on our call, but the equity is coming together. Several different groups are coming together under equity. I'm also on the executive committee for CMTA, the California Manufacturers Technology Association, as well as I sit on the board for the National Associations of Manufacturers. And I am a union shop. I'm Steelworkers International out on my floor.
Great. Thank you, Pam. Deneen.
Hi, good morning. My name is Deneen Wolford, and I'm the Public Affairs Director for Kaiser Permanente for the East and Central Contra Costa County areas. We really appreciate the opportunity and the invite to sit with you to talk about these important matters that we have moving forward. It really goes along with our motto right now, which is our community focus during these uncertain times is how can we help? So we're really looking forward to being a part of this group. Thank you.
Okay, great. Betty.
Hi, I'm Betty Geishert-Cantrell with Spark Point Contra Costa, and we are a partnership that helps people right now during the recovery from COVID-19's financial impacts. So we're helping folks with financial, career, credit coaching, as well as work with consumer law attorneys.
Great. Thank you so much. So the next 5 folks to go, we're going to start with Sabeda, then go to Letty, then Ed, and Jim Becker, and Zule.
Hey everyone, buenos dias. My name is Spede Viveros Walton. I serve as a Director of Policy and Government Relations for 10,000 Degrees. We're a college access and success nonprofit based out of Marin, but we serve 14,000 students and families in 7 Bay Area counties, one of them being Contra Costa. I've held several roles But in this particular role, we're really interested in ensuring that students that are in the higher education pipeline, be that community college or a four-year, continue their pathway as we look kind of past the initial crisis response into crisis recovery. So I'm really honored to be here today.
Great. Thank you so much. Letty. Oh, you're muted. Can we help unmute Letty, hosts?
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Yep. Good morning, everyone. I'm Letty Kizon from Coco Kids, formerly the Contra Costa Child Care Council. I'm here to represent the childcare community, one of the most negatively impacted sectors because of the COVID. We have seen 30% of our childcare businesses close for good. But at the same time, we were one of the first to respond to the COVID by providing emergency childcare for essential workers so they can work and save lives. So we're glad to be here, and with this initiative, we think that there's light at the end of this tunnel. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Letty. Del Bacaro. You are still muted. There you go.
Hi, Ed Del Bacaro, San Francisco Bay Area Manager for TRI Real Estate Commercial. I'm on a lot of business boards, and my job is to help clients solve their problems.
Thank you. Jim Becker.
Jim Becker, President and CEO of RCF Connects, a community foundation serving Contra Costa County. Also a proud recipient of the East Bay Leadership Council's Philanthropy Awards a couple of years ago, and a partner in economic development with Donna Van Wert and others. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. So Zulay, you're up next.
Good morning. My name is Zulay Lofton. I'm with Lofton Dental and currently the chair of our Concord Chamber Board. And this upcoming year, we actually are focusing on our local small businesses, how best to support them through this, but also just ongoing.
Great, thank you. So next up, so I have Leo Scott, Devora Levine, and then Andrea Rios.
All right, Leo Scott with Graybo & Scott. I am the president and CEO, and Graybo & Scott has a 35-year history in Walnut Creek, actually. As a small business, we work in the transportation sector and looking forward to participating.
Great, thank you. Devora.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Devora Levine. I'm an assistant director at the Employment and Human Services Department, and I'm here to support this task force in being successful, and I care deeply about our community and the disproportionate impact that we're seeing in this pandemic, and I'm excited to be here and support this collaboration.
Great, thank you. And Andrea, set me straight about how you say your name.
It's Andrea.
Andrea, excellent.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Rios, and I'm with the Family Justice Center. We are a one-stop center for those that are going through interpersonal violence. So that's domestic violence, sexual assault, elder abuse, child abuse, and human trafficking. We have seen an increase in individuals in very violent and difficult situations staying there because they have no other options, especially during this time. So I'm excited to be here and see how we can create more opportunities for them to be able to leave these situations.
Okay, the next 5 folks I have are Dana, Tamika, Lindsay, Alejandra, and Isamar. So Dana, you're up. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dana Sabota, and I am the Executive Vice President and General Counsel for Genova Homes. I also serve as the chair of the BIA Bay Area, the Building Industry Association, a collective of home builders that are working within the 9 Bay Area counties. And then I also serve as a board member for a foundation called Yellow Roof, and we are a foundation that strives to build affordable housing projects in California to those who are severely disadvantaged. So I am happy to be here.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, Tamika.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Good. I was having audio issues. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tamika Greenwood, and I am Government and Community Relations Manager for Sutter Health. In this forum, I'm representing Sutter Delta, which is the community hospital in Antioch, and just excited to be here. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Tamika. Good morning, Lindsay. You're up.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Crane with Chevron. This is one of the things that we have actually addressed around the world as a global company. And I've spent most of my career abroad. And so it feels like a huge surprise to actually be dealing with it here. But I'm so glad we're doing it. And I'm looking forward to participating.
Great. Thank you. Alejandra.
Good morning, everyone. Alejandra Chamberlain with the Contra Costa County Office of Education, representing Superintendent Lynn Mackey.
Great. Thank you so much. Isamar.
Good morning. Happy to be here and join this task force. I am the general manager of the Veranda, a 3-year-old mixed-use lifestyle shopping center in Concord. Boots on the ground, I'm seeing the effects that this pandemic has had on my small businesses, the workforce that the Veranda serves. Our center is currently 50% occupied. We are impacted because we are so heavily entertainment and dining focused, and that workforce that serves our community has been heavily impacted. So I'm very happy to join this community and to work with this task force.
Great. Thank you so much. So the next two folks to be able to do a quick introduction are Ruth, and then we'll go to Brian Cook, who was just able to join us from CSU East Bay. So Ruth and then Brian. Oh, can we unmute Ruth? Ruth, are you joined? Oh, yeah, there you go. Hopefully that works. I am. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Ruth Barajas with Bay Area Community Resources, multi-service organization in the Bay Area, including Contra Costa County. Pertinent to this group, BACR in partnership with local religious leaders are coordinating COVID response services, including access to employment, unemployment insurance, food stamps, etc. So happy to be here and ready to partner.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Brian, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you all. Sorry I was late, the conflict. Another Zoom meeting. My life is nothing but Zoom meetings. I'm sure most of you can relate. I'm the Associate Vice President for University Extension at Cal State East Bay. We have campuses in Concord, Oakland, and Hayward. And we're one of the many public institutions in the East Bay. I'm sure, hopefully most of you are aware of us. And my work has been, probably comparable to a lot of yours. Supporting staff, faculty, and students virtually. Luckily, our campus and my operation, the majority of our programs were either online or hybrid. So we were well positioned in respects for how we could succeed in this pandemic. But a lot of the work that I've been focusing on over the past few months is supporting our international student population who have been, for lack of a better word, just kind of put into the washer and dryer and back and forth, so to speak, in regards to how policy affects their educational journeys. So from that perspective, I didn't know what the protocol was. So
no, you're doing great. Yeah. No, that's great. We were just having folks do kind of a quick name and affiliation and a few words about their affiliation, and so that's great. So I think I covered anybody. I saw a phone, somebody joined by phone, but that could just be their audio for something else. So 925-324-9903. If that is a phone number, can you, so go ahead.
Kristen.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, this is Sharon Jenkins with John Muir Health.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, everyone. So joining by phone, I'm going to get on the Zoom here in a minute, but so glad to hear so many talented folks on the phone. Gives me a lot of hope that we're going to figure this out. So appreciate everybody taking the time. My title at John Muir Health, Director of Employer Broker Relations. So just lots of assistance to our employers. John Muir Health leadership is very much focused on our employers and our patients and how we can help. So also former chair of the East Bay Leadership Council. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Is there anybody that joined that I missed of the panelists? Okay, great. So, and Jim Brandt is leading from the attendees. They can use the chat function for everybody to see it. You can also use the Q&A function in terms of adding to our discussion. We'll be monitoring that. Okay, so we do have a few more minutes, and I did want to go ahead and put up what we did is we put together a couple of slides to try to summarize what we heard from you in the pre-event survey. And so so what we're going to do is start sharing a screen, which means a lot of your boxes will disappear. I leave it to, it is terrific in this era to work with folks who are more learned in Zoom than I am. So what we did is, again, we did send out a pre-event survey that had 3 questions to try to capture a bit about what you want to see addressed. I don't expect you to be able to read the smallest words, but there really was a lot of a commonality in terms of thinking about how to help workers, help people think about small business and recover, all the things that you would expect. And a lot of folks touched on that during their introductions. In terms of how you've seen your industry and business and life impacted, I thought that one of the responses that really resonated with me was like, isn't it better to say what hasn't been impacted? Because it really does feel like for so many industries and businesses and sectors that there has just been such profound disruption, whether, Alex talking about the restaurant that had 90 employees and now has 3, all the businesses that have closed, right? I mean, DC talking about, covering what's important in terms of how workers are impacted, or Letty talking about 30% of childcare closing in Contra Costa. So just as you would expect, lots of uncertainty about COVID positivity. Vic touched on that in his introduction in terms of the positive cases that they're seeing among the local workforce at PG&E, and they're such a large local employer in the county. And really, there's such a, how can we keep workers safe? It's on the cover of the LA Times this morning. It's really at the center of our ability to recover as a region. So really, there's a lot of commonality between your shared experience about the impacts on industry and life. In terms of thinking about choosing one sector poised for growth, it's really glad that Sharon, Tamika, and Deneen are all here, because 39% of you said healthcare. And so really important to have all the local partners and large employers representing the healthcare sector here. Not a big surprise. A lot of you thought that tech was poised for growth, but also manufacturing, hospitality, nonprofit, and other entries. So that's what we heard from you in terms of poised for growth. And then in terms of why these sectors, you can see just in terms of, and we've got Ed's perspective from the commercial real estate, and also Alex, and thinking about the impact of working from home as a result of the pandemic and what that means for where businesses are located. I think that there is a lot of talk about how Contra Costa could be well poised because we do have a lot of housing. How can we bring those high wage jobs here? How can we encourage entrepreneurs to start and stay and grow here? So I did want to we have a couple of minutes left in this section. Didn't want to know if anybody wanted to ask any questions. You can just use the raise your hand function. If you know how to do that, you can go into participants. And I think there's a little button you can push that says raise your hand, or you can just try to get my attention. But wanted to okay, Ed. Yes, I liked that was some good hand shimmy there, Ed. So if we can unmute Ed, that would be great. Go ahead, Ed.
Really a question. Has it been defined yet what the end game or how success is going to be defined for this task force?
Now that's part of our charge. That's part of our work. I mean, Alex talked about this being an ongoing action. And one of the things that I had planned to talk about later, but I'm happy to talk about now, is thinking about how each of us has power and an ability to implement action all along the way, and identifying what we can do individually, what we can do organizationally, and then collectively what we can do together. And so I think, success, we have to define what that looks like. And I would love obviously we'll take a lot of suggestions about what people think that means. And if you wanted to add 2 cents, since you were asking the first question, happy to hear your thoughts about that. Want to unmute Ed, guys? Go ahead.
All I'm saying is this as a methodology. February is now 10 million years ago. The storm hits March 15th, COVID. This could go on for 2-3 waves. This could be 18 months. So we should have a methodology metric of what the world was like in February.
Mm-hmm.
February, we were in a record employment month, believe it or not. So then now the world is different. COVID is accelerating some pre-existing trends. Real estate is just a reflection of that. And then, so what is the metric in February, and what is the metric we want to measure against so we can define success down the road as a methodology?
Okay, great. No, I think that's absolutely right. And we're about to dive into what we know and what we can, in terms of setting the table about data. We're going to be really engaged with data in all of this work. And I think that you're exactly right there. I did just want to highlight that participants, we can ask you to unmute yourselves, but you actually ultimately need to unmute yourselves when you want to speak. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the next section. So as I was just saying, all 3 of the partner organizations are committed to having this task force be a data-driven group. Part of understanding the priorities for our work together is getting a current snapshot of the experience here in Contra Costa. We're going to be sharing some data with you this morning, and it's a core value of this task force that we will be elevating the voices of people most impacted by COVID-19 and those experiencing systemic barriers to opportunity that have only been compounded with this pandemic. Kish referred to that in his remarks. So we're going to dive in here. I'm going to start with a few things and then pass it to Lindy Lavender to do kind of the bulk of the presentation. So, okay, let's dive into what we know. So looking just at California, and actually these are getting worse if you look at this morning's LA Times. But as of when we prepared this slide, we're talking about more than 7 million first-time jobless claims filed in just the 4 months since the state and local government agencies began to shut down. So a 14.9% unemployment. We also know that this is not equally impacting by gender. And so in terms of the percent of the labor force receiving unemployment benefits, so that's how we're looking at that. 17% of women women are receiving unemployment benefits, and 13% of men. Again, this is all according to Cal Matters. In terms of looking at the challenge and the rent burden, and obviously there are folks that work really closely with these issues that are here on the task force and can elaborate on this, but we thought it was important to talk about how the rent burden and insecurities are affecting different groups of our citizens differently. And so, and there's been a lot of information out there about the Latino community, Hispanics in California making up 45%. So 45% of Hispanics saying statewide that they are, they have no or slight confidence that they can pay rent in the next month or have deferred payment. There's been a lot of news about the impact of the loss of the additional $600 federal COVID related unemployment bump that has been one of the reasons that there hasn't been such a slide. And there are moratoriums in place on evictions and other things, but there is a serious impact on housing that we're facing. But you can see this on your screen in terms of the different impacts of among different communities in terms of rent burden. And then next slide. In looking at Contra Costa County specifically, and I know that the numbers on the bottom of your computer, depending on how big your screen is, you all have permission to lean in and look closely. No one will judge you on the video. I might need to do that myself. But according to our good friends at Contingent Macro Advisors who were looking at the local data, to Ed's point about the record employment that was happening 143 years ago in February, the picture looks really differently. So on the left side, we're talking about the Contra Costa labor force, right? And so if you look back at historically what was happening pre-COVID, and then you see this big crash. And so that really does reflect the drop from a high in the, 565,000 folks down, and you'll see, a big drop. So 32,000 Contra Costans have left the workforce since last July, 29,000 just since December, nearly 60,000 more people filed for unemployment insurance than this time last year. Nearly 78,000 people collected benefits in April. And again, those numbers are just looking worse and worse and worse. But to the point about we had a really, really low unemployment rate, 2.7% as recently as December. And we were just below 14% in May. So, and you'll see that there was a little bit of a downward trend on that in May as some things were reopening, but these are just really dire statistics. We can go to the next slide. So this is some Google community mobility data broken up, looking at different things. So on the left there, you've got people at home. So all of a sudden in March, the red line, everybody's at home, and a huge uptick in that. So the darker blue is the 7-day average, but you'll see that, there's maybe some once a week grocery trips, but folks are generally at home and staying home. And then you contrast that. So then you look at the grocery and pharmacy percentage, you'll see in March, right? Big spike, concerns about toilet paper and other things. Just want to make sure everybody's still awake as I go through all this data. But you'll see in all the big spike for grocery and pharmacy that then dropped off for our region. We'll go to the next slide. You'll see that if you look, so then on the left here, this is workplace, right? So this is the reverse of what you're seeing about residential. So you'll see there's a huge drop in people going to work. And so, and then that trend has gone up a bit in June and July, you'll see, but it's still way, way, way down. I think that there was a news article about how traffic on the Bay Bridge is back to being 75% of normal, but that doesn't account for the fact that there's been a more than 90% drop in BART ridership. So if you look at then the data on the right, and Isamar can talk more about this, but retail and recreation, see that big drop, again, the red line being in March with the shelter in place order, just huge drop in terms of retail and recreation where people are going. And next slide. Then you look at parks. In terms of percentage change, again, people are going out to enjoy the outdoors. That is part of an acceptable behavior in our shelter in place orders. So that's on the left, but you'll see on the right, the transit station data that I was just referring to, just a real big drop in terms of about ridership. So this all comports probably to what your experience is. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and pass it off to Lindy to present the rest of the data slide deck. Go ahead, Lindy.
Good morning, everyone. So what we know here in Contra Costa County is also that while unemployment has been hugely impacted by COVID-19, it hasn't been equally impacted everywhere in our county, or I should say not everyone has been equally impacted. As you can see here, it's much larger in Bay Point than it is in Orinda. If anyone is interested, happy to share this data for all of the different census tracts here in Contra Costa County. But this was really used to illustrate just how drastic some of those differences are. We also know, and Kristen mentioned this a little bit earlier, that it's impacting renters really kind of specifically. This is a slide that was taken from the Equity Atlas presentation that was given to the Board of Supervisors here in Contra Costa County. Thankfully, this is not necessarily true at this moment because there has been a continuation of the ban on rent increases and moratorium on evictions. So 12,000 people are not necessarily at imminent risk today, but they might be in September. What it more highlights is that most of these people were likely at risk prior to COVID. This is showing us that loss of income for a relatively short period of time really makes a large impact on renters' ability to pay their rent, and therefore puts them at a higher risk for potential homelessness. This is great data that was provided to us by EHSD. Thank you so much to Kathy and her wonderful team. That really gives us a bit of a snapshot about what people and what services people have reached out to our county services for. Really highlights the need for food and therefore the food insecurity issues that Kathy mentioned at the beginning of this meeting about how many people have reached out to them and how deep the need is for food. I want to kind of highlight that again on this slide, which really looks at CalFresh applications. Again, Kathy mentioned this as well, but you can really see following that orange line just how substantial some of those spikes have been over the last year's application numbers, which at some point went from 600 to 1,700. So this really tells us a few different things. It tells us that we have food insecurity here in our county, but it also suggests that for many, job loss results in an immediate threat to their ability to provide and to thrive. So we're definitely interested in how this task force can look at that, think about that, and acknowledge how low-wage jobs likely contribute to such immediate need when those jobs are lost. I also want to talk a little bit about childcare. As you can imagine, for many, going out and looking for another job should they have lost their job is going to be a challenge if they have kids at home, especially if those kids are school age. One of the things that John Jones from Cocoa Kids and Letty, it's so wonderful to have you here as well, really asked us to highlight is that the need for childcare is only going to increase as schools choose to do distance learning. For some parents who are not able to stay home, their need for childcare will be very predominant. And if they want to go seek other employment, it'll be a challenge if they don't have any ability to access childcare. So 64% of childcare centers were closed at the beginning of COVID. Many of them remain closed. Slightly less for family childcare providers. Those are in-home childcare centers as opposed to the larger kind of more commercial childcare center. But what's important to understand is that even those that are only open at 50% capacity. There's some pretty stringent guidelines that our county public health department has put out, understandably, that makes it very difficult for a childcare center to be open at full capacity. So even those who may have childcare available to them, for example, their child was already previously enrolled in a childcare center, it's possible that they might not be able to return because a childcare center is now already at capacity. So this is a large need. It's going to be a big need as we start to think about how people can go back to work, especially as we look at what the schools are going to be doing. Again, I want to just mention that it's great to have Cocoa Kids here on the line, and that First Five is also hopefully going to be participating to help really give us some more context around this issue as we continue to work. I also just really want to highlight that this is not a new issue. Last year, the Contra Costa Economic Partnership worked to create an infographic with some wonderful partners that really looked at the opportunity gap here in Contra Costa County. And in doing so, we found that 40% of students, children here in Contra Costa County are living in families in which they're eligible for free and reduced lunches, which means that for the most part, they're living in some form of poverty. And this has a huge impact on them as students, right? It has a huge impact on them as children. But those issues are issues we're seeing family-wide. So food insecurity, as you can see, is highlighted here. So really want to acknowledge that the work that we do here won't just necessarily have short-term impacts, but long-term impacts on the opportunity gap and hopefully closing that opportunity gap here in Contra Costa County. If anyone's interested in seeing that infographic and really looking deeper at some of the numbers that we looked at last year, I really recommend you go to our website and visit this Close the Gap link. We'll also likely send this out and include it in our library, but I just wanted to let everyone know that there are more indicators on that infographic and they are really informative. Okay, so those are not all the easiest numbers to look at. But I hope that they paint a bit of a picture for everyone about some of the things we're going to be thinking about and that we hope you will be our partners in thinking about as we move forward. We also want to talk about where are we going and what are some positive things that we can think about. One of those positives is that we know there's been a lot of research and thought put into where industry is going and where we can grow. This is from a recent feasibility study that CSU did. And in that study, they highlighted that statewide, there were 4 industries that were particularly poised for growth statewide, including in Contra Costa County: finance, computer science, schools and teaching, and healthcare workers. Now, those are pretty broad names. And so, of course, within each of those categories, there are many different positions. And our next slide is going to look at that a little bit more. But it's also stuff that, again, we hope to dive into more here at this task force. This is Contra Costa County specific. It's a slide I find particularly helpful. It really looks at what is expected to be exits and entrances into industries between 2016 and 2026 in Contra Costa County. So again, you can see a lot of the industries that we just mentioned are mentioned here as well. Registered nurses, teaching assistants, business operations, medical assistants, accounts and auditors are all positions in which we expect to see growth throughout the state, but also here locally in Contra Costa County. Luckily, these are also many high wage and in some cases high skill, but not necessarily all requiring high degree jobs. So I wanted to mention that we know that some of these positions, and certainly thinking about how to provide more opportunity, is going to mean leaning in on our educational institutions. Specifically here in Contra Costa County, we think we'll likely lean into many of our community colleges. So I wanted to just give everyone a bit of a visual for how community colleges are often impacted by recessions. As recessions happen, we see the enrollment at community colleges go up, and oftentimes state budgets go down. So we see an increased need for our community colleges, an increased reliance on the services they provide, and often they're doing it on tighter budgets. So really hugely supportive and grateful to have some members of our community college 4CD here, and really looking forward to thinking with them about how we can make sure that programs are most accessible to those who are in need, recognizing they might be in tough budget challenges, especially seeing more students needing their services. Lastly, I just wanted to highlight for everyone that there is amazing work already happening here in Contra Costa County, especially around some of these particular sectors. This right here is a slide that highlights some websites that are all working on different healthcare workforce opportunities within Contra Costa County. Some of those are as early as saying to high school students, hey, if you're interested, let's give you some pre-examples or some internships. Opportunity Junction, who, thank you Alyssa for being here, is on the line with us. They have a really great program for those who may not have taken a traditional education route or who may have more barriers to employment to enter into the healthcare field through their CNA program. And then we have a nursing program right here at our community colleges, which is really a special thing and not something that is offered throughout the state, but that we also recognize is pretty impacted and not always easy to access. So I don't want to encourage any reinventing of the wheel, and I know that many of you are great minds who've been working on these things for years, and so we want to make sure that we bring all of the knowledge you already have into the conversation, and that we're not spending time looking for programs that already exist here in our community or opportunities that we've already been trying to develop over many years. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. I look forward to hearing more from all of you. You know, Kristen, I think you're muted.
Oh my goodness. I created the foul of being the facilitator that speaks while on mute. So apologies
and Kristen,
for that.
I did want to flag that Pamela Kahn has her hand raised as well.
Perfect.
I don't know if she has to speak.
Go ahead, Pam. Go ahead, Pam, you're up.
No, I know. It was telling me you wouldn't let me unmute. I do want to share another piece of data that we're looking at from the state level, and it might be something to think about, but it's actually movement of people. So we are tracking at the state level in the workforce transition, which will now be the equity. One of the first pieces of data we're looking at is actually migration patterns. And so currently the state, it's a 2/3 to 1/3. We are losing for every 2 people now that leave the state, 1 person comes in. So it's a big migration pattern out of the state. So I think another piece of data we might want to look at is actually what's the migration pattern within the county? Are people leaving, staying? The longer, what we were seeing is the longer schools stay remote, the more pressure to migrate. People are moving back home to where they have family structure and support to help with the childcare and education. And I think another thing that this pandemic has shown is many jobs can be done remotely. So the need to actually live here there's certain freedoms now to leave certain areas. So I guess I just wanted to share that is basically the piece of data we look at every single time we meet, is updating those migration patterns. So we might want to look at that at a more micro level.
Great suggestion. And that's a perfect segue into what we wanted to find out from you in terms of other data that you would be interested in looking at Contra Costa, in Contra Costa. I mean, the vision for these meetings moving forward will be a lot more listening on our part and conversation, some small breakout groups, and a real dynamic nature to the conversation. But we did want to find that out. So Lindy, do we have a poll to launch on data? Yes, great. So go ahead and take this poll if you're can the panelists take this? I was just seeing a notice that hosts and panelists can't take it, but hopefully you guys can take it.
Let me relaunch it. Hold on 1 second.
Because what we wanted to do was get a sense, just Pam set us up perfectly, that migration data would be really important. And would love to figure out the best source of that data and unpack what we know about, as Bob Linscheid was suggesting, what's the reason for migration. You know, Pam alluded to the school closures and having more family supports. Also, in terms of new home sales, as Ed Delbocaro talks about the outer rim of the Bay, there's been really a lot of real estate activity as people are realizing they can live further and further away from their jobs. So that has implications for our region as well. So it doesn't look like we can launch the poll, which is for panelists. We're figuring this out, not a problem. So but what I would just ask that each of you do is just take a quick minute. If you have a great idea about what kind of data you'd like to see, go ahead and put that in the chat right now. Just take a minute and let us know what you think. Or if you want to, just say a verbal selection, just go ahead, put your hand up, and it's okay if you think you're like a little bit dated out or you just trust us and more of the same, but would love to get your perspective on that. So we'll take a minute for that. And then we'll move on. And aha, this looks like this might work. Yes, Lindy did it. So go ahead and take this poll. And you can select as many as you like. And I do realize that there are a number of you that had to drop off at exactly 10. In the future, these will be 60-minute meetings. We knew that the sort of formation component and introductions would necessitate this one being a little bit longer. Okay, and disaggregated data, that's a great point coming out of the chat. Lindy, do we have poll results? There we go. So our big winner is more data on growing industries. Okay, great. This is really helpful. Okay, so we are a little bit behind schedule at this point, that's okay. But I did want to just, and we will go through the chat and make sure we acknowledge all of the great suggestions that you've shared. So the worsening public health crisis and the prospect of having to actually implement some more stringent shelter-in-place orders, makes the task of this work more daunting. We just presented a lot of data that might, have us feeling a little overwhelmed, but we're going to do what we can to pivot and be solution-oriented. So what we're going to do is launch another live poll. And it's okay that you have various levels of knowledge about what each of these concepts even is. And at this point, and we are aware that if given the choice, you would likely choose all of the above, but that's not going to be a choice here. We're going to make you sort of a forced choice between 4 things. So given the current state of unemployment and the serious need among thousands and thousands of our county's residents, please participate in this live poll we are launching now about where you think there are opportunities for increased investment. So under 4 choices: stronger education pathways and support, more paid internships or on-the-job training, financial support or incubation for small business, or highlighting existing and available programs. So take a minute to participate in that poll, please. And we will be able to share the results in just a minute. Oh, Pam, you have seriously the cutest cat. I just had to say that out loud. I'm a cat person who married a guy with an allergy. So just putting myself out there as someone who misses cats. Don't tell TJ. Okay, look at this. So pretty evenly split here, with a slight edge to stronger education pathways and support and more paid internships and on-the-job training, but right back, right behind that, financial support and incubation for small business. So, and it does look like you all want us to do more than highlight what's available, because guess what? What's available is not adequate, or we wouldn't have these systemic barriers. So thank you very much for that. With just less than 5 minutes left, or about a little over 5 minutes left in our time together, we did want to talk about, and Ed kind of previewed this issue. ODC, did you have a comment? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were raising your hand or not. I'm a big talker. It's why I have to wear these. I'm a big mover when I talk, so that's why I have to wear headphones. So in terms of distinguishing the work of this task force and what it means to take action, I did want to just highlight that that'll look different for each of us as participants. But I just want to encourage each of us to think broadly and creatively as possible when we think about action, because we really are at this unprecedented moment, even though that's a very hackneyed phrase at this point, as we're trying to identify the best ways to ensure that everyone in our community is fed and housed and has access to healthcare that they need in the pandemic and beyond. A regular feature of our work together will be identifying action that policymakers at various levels can and should take to facilitate business formation, retention, and growth. But as we begin to talk about the areas that need increased investment, meaning financial investment, let's also keep in mind the power within this group and our own networks. This pandemic has brought about many examples of people and organizations working together differently to solve urgent problems. So your wisdom and the evolving conditions around addressing the COVID-19 pandemic will help us create the roadmap for our work together. So what my call to action for each of you is that we're going to give you an opportunity to share your best idea about what we tackle next and what you think that early steps in our work should be. And we're going to send that in our post-event survey. And my challenge to you is to take some time to share your best thinking. And so we can help formulate our next agenda. But I do want to, I did want to just, take a minute to share an example about, the idea that we really can change the conditions for our region and our communities by what we do together. When I think about all the different transformational things that happen even pre-COVID, for example, the state of Tennessee decided that they wanted to become a college-going culture, and it's still a work in progress. But what they decided to support their college promise effort is that they needed mentors. They needed everybody in the business community at whatever level to put their hand up and volunteer, to do a very discreet thing as a mentor. Their goal was to have at least 3 mentors for every single kid in high school in Tennessee, with the goal of helping them complete the FAFSA, the federal application for financial aid, which is a convoluted, complex document. And so they basically created this call to action where you're a pariah if you don't volunteer to participate as a mentor. Nobody is too busy to help at least one kid with their FAFSA. And I thought it was brilliant that they want to give each student more than one mentor so that we don't fail. It's sort of a bubble wrapped approach. I just give you that particular example as we think about financial investment, because look, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to hear a lot, hopefully, about federal action with the subsequent stimulus plan. We're going to hear about what the California legislature is doing. I was on the phone with Assemblyman Grayson on Monday because his name was listed as one of the folks that's on the working group in both houses on this potential $100 billion stimulus plan that they're talking about doing. There is potential action on revenue changes. Oh yes, and there's an election. So there's going to be a lot of talk about big systemic things, but I want to bring it back to where Alex started. I agree with him that we shouldn't, I don't want us to worry about big grandiose ideas. We can have big creative ideas, but I want to just acknowledge that there actually is a lot of power and good wisdom in this particular group. So just wanted to set the table. On a personal note, I was living in New York City on September 11th. A lot of you know that. And one of the things that was really impactful that I think about regularly is that I volunteered as a facilitator for a session that the City of New York organized called Listening to the City. What they wanted to do was hear from residents about what should be done with the World Trade Center site in terms of building a memorial. And they asked for folks that had international facilitation experience. I ended up facilitating a group of all Cantonese speaking immigrants. And I had a very inadequate interpreter at first. So I basically had to fire my volunteer interpreter, which was kind of awkward, but I was also very aware that I wasn't getting the full story. Got a new interpreter, really was blown away by what I was hearing from the immigrant workers that some of whom had lost children in the World Trade Center, and what they wanted more than anything, they wanted a memorial with a picture of their son, but more than anything, they wanted living wage jobs. And that experience, almost 20 years ago, has stayed with me because of how important, and even when people go through trauma, particularly when people go through trauma, it's incredibly important to be able to provide for their families. And we need to do a better job of that locally. So just wanted to close on that note and thank everyone for their engagement during our first meeting. I know it can feel like this is a large group and you might be thinking, how can I fit in and what are we gonna do? But we're gonna chart that course together. We're gonna meet in 2 weeks' time from 9 to 10. And I just want to thank you for all of your compelling suggestions and all your best thoughts. We do have 3 minutes before we wrap and wanted to just open it up to anyone who had a closing thought or a comment that they wanted to share with the group, if you've got one. It's also okay if you don't. Okay, well then, I think that we will just go ahead and close. I really think it's an honor and a privilege to work with this really talented group. Thank you for making us smarter in what we do. And I look forward to our continued journey together and think that we're going to get a lot done. So again, look for the post-meeting survey from us. Please share your suggestion about the next arc of meetings and what you want us to focus on. And I really appreciate you engaging in this work together. Thanks very much. See you soon. Have a good day.